Data is everywhere, but data's role in journalism, along with the surge of society's reliance on computers, has increased significantly over the past several years. It is a form of reporting that usually focuses on numerical information, looking for trends that appear in datasets and other forms of data to find stories that simply would not be possible without that form of research. With the rise of the digital age, data journalists carved out an essential role in newsrooms worldwide. This week's episode of The Message with Muscavage and Murphy, we speak with Sean Lahman, a data journalist at the Rochester Democrat and Chronicle and a data manager at the Society for American Baseball Research, to learn more about data and its influence in journalism and the other impacts it has outside of the newsroom.
So, I guess we're just going to jump right into it. I was just reading off your story that came out, Democrat and Chronicle just put it out about a half hour ago about the unclaimed funds from the state comptroller's office. And I guess we'll discuss that in a little bit, but I guess first off, some people might not even know, some of our listeners might not know what we're talking about with data and database journalism. So I guess,
Sure.
You've been working at the Rochester Democrat Chronicle for how many years now as a data journalist?
I've been there since about 2010, so I guess 6 years or so. Before that, I worked for the New York Sun before they went out of business.
Mm-hmm. So can you explain data and explain maybe how data can lead the stories that otherwise may not be achievable without it?
Sure.
And maybe give a couple, bare bone examples.
Yeah, so a lot of times when we think about investigative reporting, we think, the traditional kind of path, which is to go out and talk to people, to get sources, and to, try to uncover some wrongdoing or try to shed some light on something that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But with database reporting, what happens a lot of times is rather than talking to people, we start with kind of making inquiries of large data sets. If you've seen the movie Spotlight,
Sure.
At the center of that was a guy for the Boston Globe building a database, a spreadsheet, I guess. He went through the directories of all the priests at the churches in Boston, and that really helped them to track down what was going on with the scandal with the pedophile priest and being moved around. They were able to track that because they built their own database and answer some questions that, certainly no source within the Boston Diocese was going to tell them the details of their cover-up plan and how they'd move these priests around. But they were able to figure that out by building a database and using that as a source. So oftentimes that's what we do is to build our own databases, or sometimes, in the case of the story that I have out today, it'll be in print tomorrow, but it's an existing database.
Mm-hmm.
The state, if you have an account somewhere with the bank or an insurance company and they lose track of you for some reason, they're required by law to turn those monies over to the state.
Nope.
And it's a lot of money in there. It's $14 billion. There's 33 million different accounts, and there's only 20 million people living in New York. So it gives you a sense of just how vast this database is. And one of the things I was kind of surprised to find when I looked at it was, there's some well-known people in there. Robert Duffy, the former lieutenant governor. He was the mayor and the police chief here in Rochester.
Yeah, and Lou Graham.
He was in there. Lou Graham, who's internationally known, but certainly beloved to folks here in Rochester. But Donald Trump has an unclaimed account in there. Governor Cuomo is in there. I found stand-up comics and baseball players and all kinds of things. And the burden is on individuals to go out and find that they're in there and to put a claim in. And, most of these are not millions of dollars. Most of them are under $100, but it's money that's out there. And, the volume of it, the 33 million accounts, really makes it prohibitive for the state to do that on their own.
No.
So, it was an opportunity for us to say, hey, this is out there, and you should go check it out. You may have some money owed to you.
Yeah, that was a very small chunk you guys looked at, too, 180,000 accounts out of
I looked just at Monroe County, but, it's out there, and I'm every time I do this story, and we've done this story maybe once a year, or I'm not sure how many times we've written it, I get emails from people or Facebook or Twitter, just saying, hey, I searched my name and I was in there, and, nobody's getting rich. It's, maybe a check for $60 or $40, but every little bit helps.
Yeah, now, you mentioned in the Spotlight example, it was like a spreadsheet, basically. And what kind of how was this data displayed in the state's report? Was it like another spreadsheet or something?
Well, you're talking about the data from in the comptroller's office?
Yeah, the unclaimed funds.
Yeah, it's, it gets to be tricky because, again, 33 million accounts, it's a lot of information, and that's what makes it difficult.
Yeah.
So one of the ways that, another way that we can help as journalists is to take that information and put it into a more usable form. So we have in New York State, as you know, Nick, there's six Gannett newspapers, and we collaborate on a site. It's called nydatabases.com, and it's exactly for things like this. We put that database up there. People can come and search on their name. They can search on their address. If you have a name that's maybe misspelled, often you can search on your address where you live and maybe find something. There's also businesses in here, which is surprising to me. There are school districts and, cities and counties and all kinds of things. What sparked my interest on this was the comptroller was here in town talking about something else, and I asked about this challenge they have of trying to return, unclaimed funds to people. Sometimes people die. That's why these companies lose track of them, or sometimes they move. But a lot of times it's just that they have a common name. And so the comptroller mentioned that here in Monroe County, there was a person with a very common name, and they had an insurance settlement for $275,000, and they put a lot of effort into trying to find. I don't remember exactly what the name was, but it's something like John Wilson.
Okay.
You can imagine there's a lot of John Wilsons out there.
Yeah.
So they're trying to track down and find the right person, and a lot of people wish they were the right John Wilson, but they aren't.
Yeah, sure.
So
yeah.
It's a fun little story. It's not really the Catholic Church scandal or Watergate or anything like that, but it's it's an opportunity to let people know about something they may not have known about.
Yeah. Now, programs like Excel or Access are a little bit different from other ways to look at data. Do you want to explain some of these other techniques that can be used to navigate data or data sets? What's up with like SQL or MySQL? That's like a little bit lower level.
Well, when you get to, with Excel, you can work with a database of a few thousand or maybe even 100,000 records. But those programs, Excel or Access, which a lot of people, have and are familiar with, you really can't work with 33 million records at once. And some of these projects we do, that's the issue. The size of the data is it's more than these desktop programs can handle. So that's what we do with our database site is built on SQL, which can essentially handle an infinite number of records. We have a real estate database there that has all the transactions, every real estate transaction in the state going back to the early 90s. That's hundreds of millions of records, and you couldn't even download that or open it up on your computer. It's just too massive.
Sure. So could you explain a little bit like the difference between like SQL and Excel, just to differentiate for our listeners?
Yeah, so SQL is typically it's a server-based program. It's on a server, and it has some tools that enable it to look at a file that's that big through it creates indexes or through other techniques that really let you if you wanted to say search for a single name out of 33 million records, it would take too long for a program like Excel or Access to return that answer. But SQL is able to do that in a much quicker way. And also when you talked about doing things like sorting, if you want to sort a database by date or amount or alphabetical order, again, with millions of records, that's, if you try to do that in Excel, your computer's going to freeze up.
Yeah. So I guess just to switch a little bit up a little bit, there's data in everything, and you experiment with data in sports. You're actually you're part of SABR, Society for American Baseball Research. Can you explain what you do there? I think you were mentioning to me that you were just at a conference in I think it was Toronto.
Yeah, I was up in Toronto last week.
And what'd you do at that conference? And can you explain a little bit about how data has, influenced other parts of, just everyday life, like sports?
Yeah, well, I was up. The conference was at the business school in Toronto, the University of Toronto. It's the largest business school in Canada, and they have a really good program there for folks who are interested in going into sports. And that could be on the management side. It could be as people who want to be an agent, people who want to be in the media. And so it was an opportunity for folks from a lot of different backgrounds to come there and talk about, what they do and to share kind of how you get from business school into some of those jobs. Mm-hmm. So my focus was really on how data and analytics have really changed sports, and particularly baseball. I've been involved in with SABR, the baseball research, for a long time. I was editor of the Baseball Encyclopedia back in the 90s, and did some of the first baseball encyclopedia stuff online. It's interesting because data has made a big impact not only on sports but really in the business world. If you think about a company like Amazon or Netflix, they're not really in the business of selling books or streaming movies so much as they are in the business of collecting data. Netflix knows
to track interest.
Everything that we watch. They know which movies we put in our queue and which ones we actually watch, and they know if we start a movie and don't finish it, and they know if we sit around all weekend watching binge watching a show. And it's that kind of information that really makes them successful as a company, because they know what people want, and that helps them to deliver it.
Yeah,
it's the same way with Amazon, and it's a similar thing that's going on in sports. Is that teams are trying to find ways to get a competitive advantage by collecting more information and analyzing it in ways that just weren't possible 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah, and like you were saying about the stores and different businesses, we were talking about your 2013 article about data in sports, and you gave this one example. I actually heard it in one of my classes here at the University of Albany about Target finding out that a girl was pregnant before her own father did, and that was through data and like seeing what she was purchasing at the store. And just to go back to the whole data with baseball, from that same article, you gave this pretty interesting background of data in baseball that I had no idea existed. Basically, what you wrote was data points in baseball really started with Turkin and Thompson's first Barnes Baseball Encyclopedia, and it only had about 1,800 data points. And in your 2013 article, I think where you left off was about 18 million data points in 2007. And I guess just to further that, how did that data proliferate like that? And what do you think right now in 2016 that number is estimated at of data points in baseball?
Well, I can tell you it's even higher than that. We're in the terabytes of information per game.
Wow.
The big change has been we've moved from
Per
and
game,
not
you
just in
said?
baseball. Yeah, per game.
Wow.
It's mind-boggling. The big change has been really the ability to automate the collection of data, and it's the same thing in the business world, and it's the same thing in all aspects of data collection. So, 25 years ago, when you looked at say the baseball encyclopedia, all of the information that's there was essentially tabulated by hand. You'd have a scorekeeper sitting in the ballpark, keeping track of what happened, for each batter. Someone would add that up at the end of the game and create a box score, and then someone would tabulate that at the end of the season with the total statistics. There's a limit to how much information an individual can capture, and so that's why when you go back and look at one of the Turk and Thompson encyclopedia, the first baseball encyclopedia, which came out in the early 50s, that was the process by which that information was gathered. But now we have systems. Major League Baseball created the system about 10 years ago called PitchFX, which uses a combination of video cameras and radar that's installed in every system. And they collect about 45 data points for every single pitch that's thrown. It calculates the X and Y coordinate of where the pitcher's arm is when he releases the ball. It captures the speed of the pitch, the rotation and the trajectory of it. And it's just a remarkable amount of information that, no person or even a team of people sitting in the ballpark would be able to capture that with any accuracy, with any consistency. But now you have this huge trove of information without really any clear idea beforehand, I guess, of what you're going to do with it, but a phenomenal amount of information about every player, about every game, about every pitch. And, they've got a newer system now that's only been out a couple of years called StatCast, where, again, with radar and with video cameras, they track the position of every player on the field several times a second, the ball in motion, how quickly each player moves, where they're positioned when the play starts. And it's just having that huge amount of data leads you to be able to ask all kinds of interesting questions about it and, learn more about your team and about your players and about baseball in general.
Yeah.
And they're doing this in hockey and basketball and football as well. One of the folks I talked to at the conference in Toronto was telling me about a system that they're experimenting with in hockey, where they've got these sensors in the puck and in every player's stick, and so they can essentially build this 3D model of where the players are on the ice and what they're doing, and it's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, and I don't think there's really any sight in it. It seems like like the example you gave for Spot, like how he kind of made his own database by looking at this stuff. Now people are comparing different sets of data, and that makes data within itself. So it's kind of just like this, I don't know what the future is going to hold, but it seems like it's going to be, in that article, you actually said video was what people could look forward to be like the big game changer.
Yeah.
Do you want to explain that a little bit and how that differentiates just from data itself?
Yeah, well, one of the really interesting developments has been what they call computer vision, which is this technology where you take just a regular video image and you're able to teach the computers to understand what's in it. So, for example, you can teach a computer to look at cars that are driving by and see whether or not they've got passengers in them. So out in California, where they have the carpool lanes, you're only supposed to drive in that if you have at least two people. They can monitor that with the camera looking down to see, and a person could do that, of course, but that would be the worst job in the world, right? But you can teach a computer how to do that, and it can snap a picture every time a car goes by. And if it's one person driving alone in the carpool lane, send them a ticket. Folks are probably familiar with the license plate reader technology. They use them at toll booths. They also have them mounted on police cars. So, and that's a really cool thing. If you can find on YouTube, they have videos of this. But You sit in the police car and you drive up and down, say, through a parking lot, and every time it goes past the car that's parked there, it can see the license plate, it can figure out what the numbers and letters are, it can compare it to a database. And so police drive through the parking lot at the mall looking for stolen cars, or you can look for, cars with, expired registrations or whatever.
That's pretty impressive.
But, yeah, so it's this ability to take just regular video, not anything special, not special cameras or anything, but being able to train computers to analyze and understand what's in the pictures. And so that's really, that's what a lot of what's happening in sports, where you can determine all of this information about what's going on by doing that. But again, it goes beyond sports. I know one of the things that retailers are starting to do, they've got cameras all over Walmart or Target or wherever you go to stop shoplifting. But you can feed that into a computer and you can learn things about, say, the path that your customers take through the store. How many of them go all the way to the back of the store? How many of them just go right for what they want and check out? You can learn all kinds of things by letting the computer analyze that and not forcing the store manager to sit there and watch hundreds of hours of video and try to make his own judgments.
Yeah, well, like you said, it really does go further than sports, and I guess just to bring it back to our discussion with data and journalism, I guess this is kind of like more of a basic question, but was data reporting always a position at newspapers, or has it really just proliferated over the past few years within the digital age? And do you think it's a new subset of journalism?
There has been, there was a push in the 90s, I think, for what they called computer-assisted reporting.
Yeah, they actually had classes back in the early 2000s with that.
But what that was really was, I think, just that was really different than what we're talking about today, because I think that was just really about a conceptual approach to, as we talked about earlier, using data as a source for stories and not always relying solely on human sources. But, the volume of data that governments produce or that businesses produce, I think, has really forced newspapers and media organizations to focus on data reporting as a beat, as something you would cover, just like City Hall or state government or local baseball. There's just so much data out there, and you can't rely on those public sources to do the analysis for you. I think it's your responsibility. If one of the roles of a journalist is to be a watchdog on government, I think that's keeping an eye on what they're doing and how the data reflects on that is I think it's crucial.
Yeah, and I guess just another question. This is kind of stepping away from data a little bit for a second, but coming from a journalist and a tech guy, tech-based journalist like you, we've briefly discussed here on The Message the battle currently going on with the FBI and Apple over the cell phones, encryption from the San Bernardino shootings. You must be familiar with this. How would you weigh in on that issue?
Well, it's a tricky thing. I mean, the broader issue of privacy obviously is at work there, and whether or not a government can compel a third party to do that. It raises some interesting implications, I think. One of the analogies I've heard is what if it's a company that manufactures safes and somebody had some documents locked inside? Would the courts be able to order the safe manufacturer to open that?
Yeah, it is.
Probably. But, it's a different question, because when we live, in this age where everybody's got a smartphone in their pocket, and it's not just, your photos and your emails in there. It's a log of where you've been, right? It's got GPS information in there. It's collecting data about you that you may not even be aware of. And, there's no easy answer to it. I can see the argument on the side of folks who say, look, this is a terrorist case, this is a criminal case, and The police have a right to pursue the leads, but I also think it's a slippery slope because when we talk about how these volumes of data that are getting generated, we're walking data providers, I guess, in that everything we do is tracked whether we like it or not.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess that question really was more based in data than I really expected it to be. Earlier, I said it was. I was talking about your story, and I said it was data based, and I was like, "Well, that was kind of like a pun." But yeah, I guess. Have you ever used encryption keys with sources or to obtain information? And if you have, do you want to explain what they are and what's the value of them? Like, how do they work?
Well, I haven't had much experience with that, to be honest with you. There have been a couple of occasions where I have. Generally, I'm more likely to be working with public data or data that's been generated by government. But I'll give you an example. We did a story last fall, I suppose, about remember Ashley Madison got hacked?
Yeah. And
somebody put that database of users out there. It was available, but the legality of that data and just honestly whether it was safe to download that from some sites was in question. And so we found a researcher who was willing to help us with that, but only if we were willing to communicate and share information through some encrypted methods, because that person didn't want anybody to know that they had been involved in our investigation at all. So I'm certainly not an expert on encryption, but I think the most basic way to explain it is that it's like having a key. It's like putting a lock on your message, and only the intended person on either end can get access to the message.
Yeah.
One of the things that Edward Snowden, in his revelations, one of the things that has come out is that when you send an email or when you send information out through the internet, it's essentially data going down the wire, and at different points through there, other people can intercept that and read it. And
it
so
can be logged.
For most of the things that we do, we're not too concerned about that. But when you start getting into some sensitive areas, that can be a concern at times. So there are legitimate reasons why people would want to encrypt their communications.
Yeah, and I guess we're just going to be wrapping up here, so I guess just one last question.
Sure.
We kind of talked about, I mentioned that they used to have computer-assisted reporting classes back at my university in the early 2000s, and I guess, do you believe that all collegiate-level journalism programs should have a mandated class for data journalism or big data in journalism, and why?
Well, I think they should. I mean, there's very few areas of reporting where I think those basic data skills are not important. I think coming into the journalism field, you really need to know your way around a spreadsheet, but you also need to know at kind of a conceptual level, what kinds of questions can I ask of data, what kinds of data sets are out there, and being able to work with those and to use databases as a source for your reporting. I think that's absolutely crucial.
This week's episode would not be possible without Sean Lahman and our executive music producer, Marsh Sound. Here at The Message, we would like to extend a thank you to both of them. The song you heard was called Bottom of the Bottle by Marsh Sound, and the link is in the description of this video. Be sure to check out our other Tubecasts on our YouTube channel, The Message on WCDB. We'll be back next week broadcasting from the station of WCDB Albany 90.9 FM on Monday from 6 to 8 p.m. Thank you for listening, and we hope you'll tune in.